We're not going to get a second chance in the game.
Hello, coaches. This is Chris Wolfe, Louisville Male High School, head coach. I'm going to talk more about our nickel defense, our 4-2-5 package. Episode 1, we talked about how we communicate with our players on surface areas and formations, and that transitions us into our actual coverage calls, alignments, assignments, and responsibilities versus multiple formations. Like I said in episode 1, our defense has been in the top 2 in the state in scoring defense in 6A the last 4 years. We're really proud of how flexible our defense is as a base nickel, and hopefully today you'll get some of those tips that'll help you maybe take your defense to the next level and help you, if you're a nickel-based defense, help you do a better job defending the run. First, I want to talk about our split coverage concepts. You see how I have it broken down into 3 categories here. We have a weak side boundary where we can make different calls, man, a 2 read, a cloud, or we can do fire zones over there. And we have a fire zone 1/3 or we have a fire zone half, depending on the surface. We'll do a fire zone 1/3 versus a 3x1 set versus a 2x1 set. You'll see us do maybe a fire zone half, which ends up being like a cover 6 type look. We'll talk about that some. Also on our strong side, we play a lot of robber coverage, some quarters coverage. We also will fire zone. Sometimes we fire zone out of quarters. Sometimes we fire zone out of thirds. We also will play a little bit of man free and man zero. I'm not going to get into the blitz package today. I'm going to talk mainly about our base coverages and our auto adjustments that we do based on surface areas. And then finally, we do have some combination coverages, as you can imagine, in a split coverage. And then we ended up having to come up with names for these coverages. So quarter, half to us, we'll call that as cover 6. Our special coverage, which I'll talk about what that is cover 7. Our 2 read with a combination coverage, we'll call that cover 8, which means it can be, if we're 2 read to the field and we're man in the boundary, that can be a cover 8 type look. And then our poach coverage is a 3x1 coverage that we run quite a bit. Sometimes we'll run it against 2x1. We'll refer to that as cover 9, and hopefully we can get into what all those mean and can give you some specifics on that as we move forward. First, we're going to talk about just a traditional pro set, a 2-back look, and how you would defend that. Traditionally, in past, you would have teams that would make a sky call, and you would end up having a curl flat player out of your strong safety. You would have a hook curl player out of your mic. You would have your deep third out of your corner, and you would have a middle third out of your free safety, and he would be out of there. And that would be a traditional way of playing. If you wanted to be more aggressive, you would say, hey, we got 8 men in the box. You roll your rover up, and you would play it that way, and you'd feel pretty good. You say, well, we've got 8 guys playing the run, 1 high, and we ought to be able to stop the run. We found, in my opinion, that is the least effective, non-aggressive call that you can make. Your free safety ends up covering grass if it's a running play, and your rover, a lot of times will have no run fit because he'll be down in an inverted position. Here, I have him as a high safety, but if you're going to roll him down, he'll be in an inverted position. A lot of times if it's an inside run play, he doesn't have a good fit angle there. So you won't see us calling this a whole lot, even though I do have some coaches that still think that's the best way to stop the run. We've found a better way of stopping the run, and I'll talk about that here. Here's a quarters call versus a pro surface. The quarters call is a better call, in my opinion, than the sky call, because now you're getting your free safety. When he makes a quarters call, he's going to end up having a read that's attached to the line of scrimmage. So in a quarters call, your free safety will be playing the Y, and he'll have a quick read. So he's not going to be bailing out like in a sky call. He's not going to be bailing out and guarding the middle of the field, the grass in the middle of the field where there's nobody. He's actually going to get a clue into the Y, and if the Y is blocking, then he can get and fit a run fit much quicker. He can also, from that position, cover a vertical route of the Y also. The strong safety would still be a curl flat player for us in a quarters call. Our Mike linebacker would still be a hook to curl player in our quarters call. And then, of course, our corner would then be a deep quarters to the field. And this would be a little bit more aggressive type play for this, but still not quite as aggressive as we would like to be on it. Our robber call is the more aggressive call for us. What you'll see differently in the robber call is that the strong safety, notice how the strong safety has widened out, and he is out with his back to the number one receiver, and he is wide. In episode 1, I talked a lot about one of our principles in our defense is to take away the space to the wide side of the field. So a lot of times we will have an overhang player to the wide side of the field that will take away that space and force teams, if they're going to run to the field, we're not going to get out leveraged, or it's going to be very difficult to out leverage us. The strong safety, by his position, as you can see, he even has his back to the number one receiver there. And so it puts him in position to prevent any kind of crack block by the number one receiver. Also puts him in position, even though he's keying through the Y to the backfield, it also puts him in position to take away any kind of inside slant cut or a hitch route would be very difficult to throw out to the field. The free safety would then make a read right call, which would designate the strength. The strength in this case with the two receiver side, we would read to the right, which would put the free safety reading the number 2 receiver, which is the Y here. He, just like in quarters, he'd have the vertical of number 2. We would have him, instead of having him aligned head up, we would have him inside. Depending on what kind of front you run, you may have him being jammed. We prefer not to jam the tight end if we're going to read the tight end. The jam makes it more difficult for us to be able to determine whether he's a run or a pass player. So we would play probably a 5 or a 7 eye here, and if he wanted to have a quick release outside, we would allow that, and our free safety would then jump any kind of vertical route there. The strong safety in this case now becomes, instead of just being a traditional hook curl player or curl flat player, he becomes a wide flat wheel of 3 player. And I'm going to talk about and show you how we deal with a wheel out of number 2 and how we deal with a wheel out of number 3. Now, the strong safety, like I mentioned, will keep his back to the number 1 receiver. That will allow him to prevent any kind of crack back and allow him to have ultimate leverage to the outside. The corner in this case becomes a deep player. He's a pass first player. He's the one that will be a deep half. His position is he has to stay inside of number 1 and prevent any kind of post route. He cannot allow number 1 to cross his face. So we like to make the robber call, particularly versus a pro side look, which to us is a tight end flanker, and with some decent split out of the rover or the wide receiver, will be past the hash, probably to the alley or the numbers or even to the sidewalk like he is in this case, allowing us to take away the inside of the field, giving the offense, if they're going to throw, where they're going to throw to the wide side of the field and they're going to throw to the sideline. The longest throw, the toughest throw to make for a high school quarterback. Now, when we get into robber coverage, we like it. If it's 2 back, we're pretty comfortable with it. The drawback to robber is you're going to have your Mike or your Will is going to have to cover a vertical out of the backfield. And in this case, the Mike would have to have the vertical of number 3. So if number 1 or if number 2 cleared out, it would take your free safety, then 3 coming out of the backfield would have to be picked up by your Mike. Now again, you're making these calls based on what surface you're seeing and what types of formation. So in a 2-back formation, there's not a lot of teams that will bring a back out of the backfield, have enough time for him to get down the field. For the back to come out of the backfield, and get just 5 to 8 yards down the field, that's going to be more like 2 to 2.5 seconds. So it takes a lot of time for them to get out there. And we would obviously game plan for that, but you need to know what drawbacks you might have in a robber coverage to the wide side of the field. All right, I mentioned a special call. A special call is another one we can make if we feel like that number one is not much of a threat, but we want to take away that space and then kind of combo coverage with the strong safety and the free safety. Now here it is against a pro set, but more than likely we would do it in a 3-by-1 set. But let me just show you how the coverage works. It eliminates number one in man-to-man. It allows our strong safety and free safety to combo off the number 2 receiver. So if the number 2 receiver went flat, the strong safety would then pick him up, and the free safety would be looking for number 3 vertical. If number 2 went vertical, the free safety would pick him up, and then the strong safety would be looking for number 3. This is what we would call our cover 7 look. The strong safety's rule is he's going to have the flat of number 2 and number 3, and he would obviously, the first one out there, he would have to carry the wheel of. The corner would be in man-to-man on number 1, and the free safety would have the vertical of either 2 or 3. This allows you to protect the Mike linebacker where you can't protect him on the robber coverage. In the special coverage, you could protect the linebacker with a vertical of number 2, 3 carried by the free safety. All right, talking about weak side coverage calls for us. In the first video, I talked about we like to have our boundary corner up in the face. And the reason for that is as we take away space, the space that the offense is readily accessible is the boundary space. It's a shorter throw. High school quarterbacks can make that. So we started taking away that easy space, and it really affects any kind of rhythm hitch throws that they want to throw into the boundary. High school quarterbacks and high school offenses have gotten so good. If you give any kind of cushion on a boundary receiver, they can complete the hitch at a high level or high effectiveness. So in our base look, you're going to see that corner in his face. With the corner in his face, it doesn't necessarily mean he's playing a jam technique. He could be in man, he could be blitzing off the edge. There's a lot of different things he can do there. So you still have the element of surprise while you're taking away the most easily accessible space for the offense to throw to. If we make a cloud call, so here's an example of what a cloud call is for us. Gets us a good jam on number 1. It gets us a weak corner support versus outside run. We do have some teams outside run into the boundary more because of the way we overhang to the field quite a bit. So we have to deal with that. It allows us to deal, if the best receiver they have is into the boundary, it allows us to get a jam and allows us to get a guy over top. So that's our cloud call. There's our flat at number 2, and that technique can be a little bit different depending on who you're dealing with. He can jam and sink on that, or he can be a hard cloud and just jam him and then keep his hips square. The will linebacker there will have a hole to curl. A whole area for us is straight back into the boundary, about 8 yards deep. And then, of course, the curl area is 12 by 2 inside, 2 yards inside the widest receiver there. We also will have the rover, who's going to have that half field, or the wide half of the field to deal with. All right, if we're in a fire zone 6 for us, which is a quarter half coverage, we would run that against maybe a 2-back or a 2-by-2 set or something like that. Our offensive surface will determine what we're going to do. So if we're getting 3, we're probably going to be in thirds. If we're getting 2 receivers to the wide side of the field, then we can be in quarters. In this case, we only have 2 to the wide side of the field, a pro set. So in our cover 6, we can make a weak coverage call. So if we're making a blitz, again, it's important. Your corner into the boundary can do a lot of different things. He can be in straight man, he can be in jam technique, and he can blitz. If he is in a blitz technique here, then the corner will come, as you can see. The corner is blitzing, and then behind him we'll have the will be a curl flat player. and dropping into that area, and then the rover will be our deep half player. And the space that's available for them will be, if they read the blitz, they can throw the quick hitch or throw the quick now, and you just go make a tackle and play the next play. If they don't see it, then you get a blindside hit by the corner, which is a nice play. We're going to talk about the fire zone 3 out of a weak coverage call versus a tray set. We just showed you against a two-back set. Again, one of the things that the beauty of being in a base nickel is that you can, with your configurations, you can change your coverage calls. In our case, these are some blitz calls that we will change coverage-wise based on the surface area. So in this case, we have a tray set. So in the previous one, we were in a cover 6 fire zone where we would be quarter, half, because we only had the two receivers to the strong side. So in this case, because of the 3 receivers to the strong side, and we're bringing the corner here, we're going to make a 3 cloud blitz call. So there's your blitz by your corner, and we're playing 3 cloud behind it. We have a curl flat player out of our will linebacker. He's going to drop to that area. The rover will have his deep third into his zone. All right, here's a look at our poach 9. Our poach 9 is typically used in a 3x1 set, and so that was kind of where we only used it for some time in a 3x1. But we actually started using the concept with our rovers, our weak safeties. We started using it against 2-back sets, and it allowed us to get aggressive fits from the R. We ended up, early on when we were teaching the nickel, a lot of times you see that rover, people would invert the rover and roll him down. What we have found that the rover playing where he does at 8 to 10 yards in the weak side B gap, he is a much better fit player. He can get downhill and he has better fits, and he can see an offensive running game. He can protect on the cutback. So your Mike and Will, one of the things about our linebackers is we let our linebackers run, and then they're protected by the rover and the free safety on their cutbacks. So in the poach set, his general rule is he's going to have number 3. So there's a poach 9 call. He's going to have number 3 vertical. But because there is no number 3, the number 3 is in the backfield really in this case, it gets his eyes in the backfield, which is what we want him to do in a 2-back set. So that's been real beneficial for us. Now, of course, if you're going to have your rover working to the strong side, then you have to cover the 2 receivers to the weak side. So we have a man-to-man on the corner here, and we have a man-to-man on the will linebacker. But you have a rover who's looking in the backfield and can now play a bounce read for us and get downhill. He basically becomes that 3rd linebacker. If action goes away, he's that 3rd linebacker coming down playing cutback. His eyes are in position to be able to see that, and his depth allows him to get there. The timing to be able to play that cutback has been really good. So if they were to leak a guy out on the strong side, he would have the vertical and number 3 on the strong side. Highly unlikely in a 2-back set that that's going to happen. So again, it's just a way that we can use a coverage and allow our guy to be an aggressive fit from the secondary without having to change our coverage around. So here is how the poach 9 protects the Mike from having to carry number 3 vertical. So remember, we mentioned in our robber coverage, in our basic robber coverage, the free safety would carry number 2, which means that your Mike linebacker had to carry number 3. If we go poach 9, and if your Mike linebacker is a box linebacker, you're just not a good cover carry guy, and in your game plan, the team you're playing does some of this, then poach 9 will allow you to protect your Mike and allow your rover to carry. The Mike can still wall, or he's still going to have to wall number 3, but he doesn't have to carry him down the field. You can get that out of your rover here. So in our poach 9, he's going to carry to the strong side, the vertical and number 3. Now here's a look at, you see how, so here's an off tackle or a B-gap ISO play, if you will. So here's the benefit of being in poach 9 versus an inside run play. So now you have your Mike and Will, of course, looking into the backfield. It's a poach 9, so the Mike linebacker doesn't have to worry about carrying 3 vertical. So as you can see, the Mike and the Will can fit right away. The beauty of this is we're in poach 9, so where's the rover's eyes? Well, the rover's eyes, he's trying to find who's going to be number 3 to the wide side of the field. Well, number 3 is in the backfield. So as he gets his clue in, he sees that this is a simple B-gap ISO. So now the rover is in position to play that backside cutback on an ISO where the free safety, where the fullback and the tailback are fitting B-gap. Mike and Will are coming in to fit on the ISO. It all gets jammed up. So the tailback is now going to bounce it to that backside A or B gap, and then your rover's going to be there. And the beauty of it is you had the rover's eyes in the backfield anyway because you were playing poach 9. So this is how the concepts of some of our 3-by-1 coverages are applicable to the 2-back stuff. And we started doing this 3 or 4 years ago, and we've seen a big difference as far as our rovers being able to come in there and play that cutback. Here's some man calls on the weak side. Allows the rover to play aggressive, weak side run, and the cornerback can protect versus play action pass. So as we're in a poach 9 call, which would put the corner in man-to-man and the Will into man-to-man, again, your rover is looking into the backfield because he does not have 3 detached to the field, so number 3 is in the backfield. So as you see on a man call, the corner is going to have to cover the receiver will run him off, and the corner is going to have to cover him. And here's an example. So you see the L receiver runs off the corner. This is a toss right. So we made a man call off a poach 9 on the back side. So the Will has the number 2 to his side, and the rover's got number 3 to the strong side, which is in the backfield. So as you see, here's your backfield action. You can see it allows the rover and the Will then to come fit on a toss sweep because their eyes are right where they need to be, right where they can see the action in the backfield. You hear a lot of times in different coverages where you tell a secondary guy, don't have your eyes in the backfield, don't have your eyes in the backfield. And there are some times where that certainly is problematic. But if you're a base nickel team like us, there has to be some guys with their eyes in the backfield. You have to have a way to have a 7-gap and an 8-gap fit. So you have to have coverages where their eyes are going to take them to where the ball is and where they can fit. And here's an example of us using 2 coverages, one on a front side fit on an ISO and the other one on a weak side fit on a toss sweep. All right, we're going to talk about corner and safety alignments a little bit. Let me just be clear. I mentioned this just in passing first, but in our basic alignment, I mentioned quite a bit about how we're adamant about having a press corner into the boundary or to the weak side. And a lot of times that'll be our best corner. We'll put him into the boundary to the weak side because we know sometimes we're going to leave him alone. But we don't give the offense a free pass to know what's going on. Our rover, who's at 8 to 10 yards in the weak side B gap, is in position to where he can play over top. So again, the offense is still on a pre-snap is not going to be able to declare, oh, we're going to get man coverage into the boundary or we're going to get double coverage into the boundary. They don't know. And that is really the key now is making sure that your pre-snap looks force the offense to make post-snap decisions because they don't know what they're having in the pre-snap and then be able to change our looks. So while we play a hard corner there, we play a field corner very soft. Again, and I mentioned in the first episode, the space that we are, you can't take away all of the space. And we're not comfortable, unless it's in the goal line or red zone, and having everybody up inside within 7 yards of the line of scrimmage playing tight coverage. We're not comfortable doing that. I don't think it's a sound defense to do. There are times when you have to do it, but as a base defense, I don't think it's sound. So then as a D coordinator, you have to figure out what area do you want to give up and force the offense to take that area away, show you that they can take it away. And for us, it's the wide side of the field. And so we do that. We will move our strong safety out wide. He's in a 3-by-7 alignment. He'll have his back to number 1, our receiver there. Our free safety is an aggressive bounce player. He's in a 2-by-8, which is about 2 yards inside or 1 man removed inside of the number 2 receiver at 8 yards. Not backpedaling, but having a bounce read. He can be 1 man or 2 man inside, depending on your comfort level with the free safety. We've had free safeties that could be right over the center. They were good enough to do that. The better they are, the further away you can get them from the Y and still be able to carry the Y vertical. I already mentioned this about the boundary corner plays head up, and the rover is off, and that's a generic look that we give into the boundary to our weak side. We will press him, and he'll have lots of different techniques on how he can jam and sink, how he can jam and stay, how he can blitz. We even have a press to bail that we use sometimes in the boundary, not a whole lot. Maybe on 3rd and long we'll have a press to bail, but we certainly want to show him a press coverage into the boundary. Rover's alignment, he's an 8 to 10 yard B-gap, weak side B-gap player. We give them some leeway on their down and distance, the surface that they're seeing or formation configuration, they can get a little bit deeper. Certainly on down and distance, we don't want them to creep up too tight. We want them to be able to play their responsibility. All right, here's our corner and safety alignments to twins. So our strong safety is going to be outside of number 2. Typically, if we're in our base coverage call, the corner is going to be off, and our free safety is going to be, again, 2 yards inside of number 2 at about 8 yards with a bounce read. The question a lot of times you get into, what does your free safety read? Does he key the receiver, or does he key the line of scrimmage? And a lot of that just depends on how you see the offense. For us, we do a lot of 7-on-7, and so their eyes are keying number 2 and 7-on-7 because there's obviously no offensive alignment to read. And so they get in the habit of keying there. And so when we get into team, it's kind of you're having to break a habit and have them try to get a key off of an uncovered lineman, a run-pass read if you can. One thing I will say this, because of where our strong safety is aligned and that we're not pressing, we're not jamming number 2, at least not in this coverage look, we get a cleaner look at what number 2 is going to do. If number 2 is going to go vertical, he's going to show it right away. If it's some kind of outside running play, you're going to see that right away. So one of the things I think is important is that if you're doing reads from the secondary, it's a much cleaner read if you're not jamming the receiver. I mentioned that on another receiver, particularly on a tight end. If the free safety is picking him up, a lot of times we'll have a guy in a C-gap and we won't jam that tight end because it does give us a cleaner read. And with a cleaner read, your free safety can fill much faster, or your rover can fill much faster. So here's what it would look like in a robber call. We would put him 1-by-8 inside of the number 2 receiver. He would be keying through our number 2 receiver. A bounce read, ready to pick him up if he goes vertical. The cornerback would be 2 yards inside of the widest receiver, 10 to 12 yards deep. Again, the space we're giving away is the field space there. And then our strong safety, again, we don't jam to number 2, at least in our robber calls. Our strong safety is going to be 2 yards outside, 5 yards deep, and he's going to play that wide flat. It really, having the strong safety out wide like that and turned a little bit really takes away any kind of bubble and now. It really makes it difficult for them to get any kind of bubble or now screen. I know our offense is a big bubble and now screen team, and in practice it's very difficult for our offense to get any kind of rhythm throwing them out there because of the aggressiveness of our strong safety and his alignment being outside of 2 versus inside of 2. Again, I mentioned as a D coordinator and someone who's understanding that we're in a nickel defense and we're in a 2-back set, so we have to be able to fit at least 7 to 8 gaps. Where's the open space? And for us, we leave that open space to the wide side of the field. And we've challenged the offense to take that space and prove to us they can get to that space. All right, on the back side of this, we have a tight Y receiver, and so it's a tight number one call for us. And so our general tight number one call, we can make a cloud call, which allows the corner to be a run first player. He's going to jam the release of number one. If number one blocks, then he can come fit on the force. And then the rover is going to play over top. And we can do this because there's only two quick receivers to the other side, so we don't have a big threat of number three going vertical. If number three did go vertical, the Mike linebacker would have to pick him up. There's our key for our corner. He's keying through that Y. He's going to be a flat player. Our rover is going to be, because it's a tight end, he can be a little bit closer. Tight ends are typically not as fast, so at 8 yards, a bounce read at 8 is going to be enough for him to pick him up. One of the other adjustments that we used to make here, you see how the rover and the corner have switched. If you had a safety that was a much better run player, and in your scouting report, when they had a tight number one, it was a heavy run set, you can make a switch call. We would then move from cloud to sky, sky signifying that the safety is now the run support. That's something we had done in the past, but we haven't done it in recent past. We feel like if we teach the corners early on how to play it, it makes it a much better defense in case of shifts and motions, because if they're in a twin set and they bring the receiver across the formation, they're just back into a pro set. And so do you really want your rover going out there and playing out on number one when he never does that? So that's one of the reasons we don't do the switch anymore, but we certainly used to do it in the past. Okay, here's our 2x2 adjustments versus a doubles look, which is two quick receivers on either side. I do have my bandit who's in here. He plays usually a tight 5. On the diagram, he's a little bit wider here, but he's usually a tight 5. To handle a 2x2 set in a nickel defense, you have to have someone to take away the hot throw or the easy throw to H. And for us, we use a slide technique with our linebackers, and we call them bump and scoot. Bump, usually for us, bump is boundary, and scoot is strong. And so for us, you'll see here, the will linebacker now will bump out. The Mike linebacker will go to his A gap. And so we will have a will linebacker that will play what we call a hip technique with the bandit. And the bandit, we've had times our bandit is a stand-up guy also. So depending on, we've had times where the bandit will go out and he will bump out and the will play in. But generically for us, as we teach this, we teach the will and the Mike to be our adjusters in 3x1 and 2x2, so we can handle the number 2 receiver weak and not give them an easy throw there, and we can handle the number 3 receiver strong and not give an easy throw there. We're still in treating the twin side as normal. We can get a cue off of the number 2 receiver by the free safety. The strong safety is going to play the flat. Free safety is in his typical alignment, -2, 2, and 8 yards deep. So now we have a pro side and a dual set for us and a twin side. So again, what I just mentioned, how do we adjust to 2 detached into the boundary? We have to make another bump call. So the will linebacker has to move out and handle the bump side. To the wide side of the field, we just have a pro set. And so we go back to how do we deal with a pro surface? Our free safety is going to be inside, cueing the number 2. And so he can get a quick read on number 2, which allow him to carry the vertical number 2. Strong safety plays a wide flat. There's the free safety's alignment. He's 2 yards inside, 8 yards deep. Depending on how good your free safety is, you can move him more, move him less. All right, here's a look at the dual set into the boundary. So now we have a pro set into the boundary. So that's a different look for us. We treat the wide side of the field the same. So that to us is two detached. We've been dealing with two detached. The kids have gotten a lot of reps at two detached there. So we're okay with that. We still have a wide flat player. He's got his normal 8-yard bounce read. The rover now into the boundary. We'll play him head up over top of number 1, or excuse me, the wide receiver, the number 2. We'll also have a bandit there. The technique we play with our bandit is we're going to play a 6 technique. And the bandit's going to be responsible for C-gap, and the rover is going to be responsible for the force. Now, I mentioned the rover is responsible for the force there, and one of the things is there is a little bit of softness. If you're going to run the ball into the boundary, there is a little bit of softness there. So you have to pepper the offense with a corner blitz here and there to make sure to keep them honest. All right, so here's a deuce set, which is a pro side on both sides. So we've already went over how we play the pro side into the boundary. We've already played the pro side to the field several times, so nothing changes for us. They make their calls independent of one another, and we go from there. The free safety, again, is clued in on the number 2 receiver. In this case, it's the H receiver who's lined up at the tight end. The strong safety plays the wide flat. We're going to take away the wide side of the field. The free safety is normal alignment. He's going to be 2 yards inside, 8 yards off, bounce read. The rover, because he has a tight end on his side, is going to be head up to 8 yards off. Here's a look at how we would play a deuce wing set. So now we have 2 tight ends, but we have a wing set over here. So the rover side, they're used to playing a wing set. So he would make, we'd make a read right call, which we always do to the strength. And all of these diagrams we've just made it simple. It's all been read right. That's their strong side. That's the wide side of the field. That's pretty easy call for us. The free safety's alignment is the same. There's his key. There's his read. The strong safety's in his wide flat. The corner is going to play deep half, and he would have the wheel of number 2. And so the wheel of number 3 will have to be carried by the Mike linebacker. So how do we play the wing set here? We can midpoint, which is pretty simple. It's going to be the midpoint between L and Y. One of the things I mentioned in the first episode is the wing set is a heavy run set for obvious reasons. But what it does, it takes away space for the 2 receivers to get vertical on you. They're going to be so close together that you can cover both with one guy, at least vertically, especially if you get a jam. So we use that to our advantage. So the rover is still going to play a bounce read, and so he can still help fit on this, and the corner is going to be a flat-footed 3x3. The bandit is going to be a good 6 technique jam on the wide receiver playing the C-gap. So we can get run support not only out of our corner, but we can get a quick, easy run support out of our rover, who should be keying through that outside receiver, because the inside receiver is going to get jammed. So again, you have to be aggressive. The rover cannot backpedal. He can be at 10, but he has to be in a bounce read so he can come fit on the wing side. And there's his look. That's where his midpoint would be on the deuce wing look. All right, our 3x1 sets, things that we think about in our 3x1 is how we're going to play the bubble, and the screen fits to the 3 receiver side. We're in good position in robber. We're not as in good a position in quarters, but we're in pretty good position in robber. How to play a dominant receiver, that's a wide number 1, and so you got to have a plan in the boundary. We're already kind of designed for that. We're going to have a guy that can press into the boundary, and we have a guy in position to play over top. And then how to deal with run game weak, speed option. And that's where having that variety of what that cornerback play is, whether he's a man-to-man, whether he's a press and bail, whether he's a jam and sink, whether he's a corner blitz. All of that is going to play into how we're going to defend the 3x1 sets. In our 3x1 sets, one of the things that we have to do, like we did in the 2x2 sets with 2 receivers to the weak side, we had to bump the will linebacker over there to take away space from the number 2 receiver. We have to do the same thing in our 3x1s, but it's the opposite direction. So we will make a scoot call, and it allows in our 3x1 Mike to take away inside space for number 3. So we make a scoot. Scoot for us is strong, so we make a read right call or strong right call. So then the Mike linebacker he'll do the same alignment. He does a hip alignment and moves him off of our defensive end, who should be in a 5 technique on that side, and allows him again to take away space. Also can fit into one of the 6 gaps inside as needed. The will linebacker will then move to the weak side A gap and allow him to be a fit on that side. All right, so we have to have a plan for 3x1. We have at least 2 coverage call checks for 3x1, which I mentioned there. We play cover 9. Cover 9 for us overplays the 3 receiver side, and then cover 6 overplays the single receiver side. So if you teach both of those, one is going to be your default base, and then one is going to be your mix-up call. And then as the season goes on, you're going to have, you'll eventually figure out who their best receiver is. And so we allow our kids to make the calls based on where their best receiver is. If we know we don't want to let number 6, the receiver wearing number 6, beat us, then anytime he's by himself, we're going to make sure he's double covered. And so we can make those calls, and that's an important piece of being able to adjust and take away what the offense does best and make them play left-handed. So here's an example of this. We're in a 3x1. Find the best receiver. So in a trio set, the rover makes a decision via the game plan whether he wants to work weak side or if he wants to work strong side. So again, if the L receiver was their best receiver, we would give him the authority to check into like a cover 6 look. Should look exactly the same as cover 9. The only difference is post-snap, he's going to be working and helping over top. And the corner knows he's going to have help over top, so he can be even more aggressive on his jam. Versus a heavy 3 receiver side, we can make a call that will put the coverage to that side. And that, of course, as we've talked about here, that's our cover 9 call. So if they're a heavy 3 receiver side team, sometimes it could just be a team that throws the bubble quite a bit, and you want to get an extra guy working over there. You can do that with our cover 9 call. So here's a look at how that would be. We would make a poach call, which is our cover 9. It then would put the rover now, instead of working on number 1 on the weak side, he would be working with number 3 on the strong side. He would be keying him. We call it long wall of 3 or the vertical of 3. Getting back to the corner's positioning here, now that we're making a poach call here, he's going to midpoint 1 and 2. So he's going to make sure that he stays inside of number 1, cannot let number 1 cross his face, and he has to be able to play the wheel of number 2. Now we might have a trail player on the wheel, but he has to be on the deep throw. He has to pick up the wheel of number 2. And later in the video, I have some pattern matching on wheels that I'll show you on how we do it. And then the free safeties alignment's a little different in a 3x1. We like, as long as the H and the Y are not too far apart, we like to cap the number 3 receiver with his eyes still on the number 2 receiver and working to the number 2. This gives us a better look for quarters when we do call quarters out of this, because it'll look exactly like our quarters call. The Mike linebacker in a cover 9, remember we're protecting him in a cover 9, so he doesn't have to carry number 3 vertical. In a cover 9 situation, he's going to have the short wall of 3. And what that means is he can't let the H cross his face, because that's man coverage on that back side of poach. And so if he crosses the Mike's face, we're in trouble. There's a lot of space back there. So he has to be sure that he doesn't let that guy cross his face. So he's an aggressive wall player there. Then our strong safety, he can still play wide flat here, and then he'll pick up the wheel of 3. That way, if they run 2 guys to the flat, we don't have the strong safety just leaving and carrying number 2 and then nobody there for the flat. The Mike linebacker will expand, but we'll have a strong safety there that can eventually pick it up. And then, like I mentioned on the back side, The stress on the back side of cover 9 is our man-to-man on the corner and the man-to-man on the will linebacker. All right, so we mentioned there versus a 3-by-1 versus an isolated great receiver, we can put the safety over there and he can play a cover 6, which is kind of embedded in the way we handle things here. So here's an example of that. He can make a cloud call. So on a cloud call, he knows he's going to be working to that side. He knows he's going to get a jam. Now, versus 3 receivers to the wide side of the field, we refer to this, or we talk about it, this is a stress look. Why is it a stress look? Well, because they have 3 vertical guys and we only have two guys taking away vertical space. So it is stress. So how do we deal with the stress call here? First of all, we keep our midpoint. He's going to midpoint 1 and 2. Again, the open space, as you can see, is the wide side of the field. So they have to be able to make those throws or sprint out to those throws. If they sprint out, then they've declared where they're going, and we can adjust our defense. But we want to make those throws to the wide side of the field. Now, in improving the stress, while we're going to cap 3, remember, we're not reading number 2 now. We have to be able, because we're not getting help on poach 9, our free safety has to be able to play a midpoint of 2 and 3. So his technique is a little bit different. And then finally, we do have help from the Mike linebacker. He doesn't have to carry, but he does have to give us some collision. We need some collisions to help because, again, we're stressed. We only have two vertical coverage guys or deep coverage guys, and they have 3 guys that can go vertical. So we're going to need some help out of our Mike. And then the big one here is our strong safety will have to be able to get some kind of collision on the Y and take him out of the seam. If we can get those things, we can handle the 3 detached receivers with just two guys playing deep. But for us, we tell our strong safety you got to move him at least 3 yards in either direction to get him out of that seam. On the back side of this, how we play halves, the will linebacker, we tell him he's a vertical 2 curl player. So if we get a back out that goes vertical, he's going to stay with him because we do have some stress on that rover. If we get an outside release by that L, that rover, there's some space there. So we'd like to have somebody in a trail position if they bring a back out on a vertical to the weak side. And then, of course, with a cloud call, you're going to have a jam flat player out of your corner. This is versus a tray wing set. We could make a cloud call on this backside again and protect that. If that L is their best receiver, they could do independent of one another. All right, and then we could do a cover 7 sky call here. So on a cover 7, our corner now plays man-to-man on the rover, and so now we're going to combo off of the wing set. We got a strong safety free and a Mike. And remember, the wing set creates a gap, but it takes away the horizontal space of 2 receivers going vertical. So we feel like we can get away with only having one deep guy on that, and we can jam at least the inside guy with the Mike or jam the outside guy with the strong safety and kind of keep those guys from getting any kind of space. We also can do a flat-footed read out of the free safety, so he can now, I say flat-footed, we want to say bounce read, get a bounce read out of the free safety so he can now fit into that extra gap. He should get a clean read out of the wing and be able to fit as needed. So we get that extra player out of the secondary. So the key in the nickel defense is having guys that are coverage, deep coverage guys being able to make plays at the line of scrimmage. And in this case, with a wing set here, we're going to take advantage of what those wing sets usually give us, allow us our free safety to play downhill. His alignment, he's going to midpoint. He's going to have the vertical of 2 or 3, whichever one goes vertical. The Mike is going to play the 3 receiver hook. The 3rd receiver is the Y, so he's going to work off of his inside leverage and then expand as needed. The strong safety, again, they're comboing off the first guy to the flat. He will pick him up and carry him on a wheel route. Remember, he didn't have to carry him in a wheel route on cover 9 because the corner was playing deep half and would be able to pick him up. But in cover 7, because the corner is man-to-man, he's going to have to cover any wheel routes by number 2 or the first guy to the flat, which is the wheel. And then the backside, just like we had in the last one on a cloud call, he's a vertical 2 curl guy. And then, of course, the corner is a jam flat player. All right, I'm going to get into just a little bit of when we're running cover 9, one of the things that we have issues with early is how to deal with the wheel routes out of either number 2 or number 3. So I'm going to work through a pattern match here on, this is our cover 9 poach coverage and working on some wheel routes. So first, I didn't do a wheel route first, so we're doing a curl flat seam versus our cover 9. So the curl is the outside R receiver, the Y is running the flat, and H is running the seam. So if you remember in our cover 9, the rover is responsible for the long wall of 3. So as you see here, as H goes vertical here, that's a pretty easy pickup for him. He's going to carry him vertical. Now, the Y is going to the flats, and so we have a wide flat player, which is the strong safety, so he should be able to match that route. And then the R receiver, who's going to run the curl, the cornerback is not responsible for the curl in our cover 9. He's a deep half player, because if that Y goes up the sideline, the corner has to be able to play that wheel route by Y. And so the strong safety could be in a trail technique because he knows number 3 is gone. If he knows number 3 is gone, he can play a trail, but the corner has got to keep his shoulder square and be able to play that Y on the wheel route. So he can't play the curl. So the free safety who's keying off of number 2 in a cover 9, that's where the robber comes in. He's going to play that curl route. So that's how we would match a simple curl flat seam concept. Now, I want to show you one with a wheel component to it. So it's the same thing, except now the Y, instead of just going flat, is going to go up the sideline. And then we get a flat out of number 3 here. So it would look like this. First, your rover's running the curl. The Y is now gone up the sideline, and the H is in the flat. So again, the corner is going to be your deep half player. So he's going to go deep, so he's over top. The strong safety can trail, but as number 3 comes out the flat, he can't get out leveraged by number 3. So he's got to eventually let that guy go because he knows number 3 is coming to the flat. Number 3 did not go vertical. So the corner is going to have to match. Again, that's a long throw for the quarterback to get to the Y up the sideline. There's going to be a lot of air on it. So as long as your corner, who's a deep half player, keeps his shoulder square and he stays high hip on the number 1 receiver, he should be able to get over there and make the play. And of course, we already mentioned the free safety will match that in route by the rover. And if that rover, if the R receiver, instead of running a curl, let's say runs a post, the free safety is going to man turn and run with him down the field and take away the low hip of him. And then, they have to make a good throw down the field, that type of deal. So you end up in a man pattern match, you end up in a man coverage here, strong safety on the H, the corner is going to play the Y, the free is going to play the R receiver. All right, so this is the boundary side. If you remember, what do we say on cover 9? The boundary side is going to be, it's going to be a man coverage because the rover's working up. So just a kind of a look at our curl wheel flat, and then to the boundary side, I just did a fade flat look here. So there's your curl wheel flat, and there's our match that we just showed there. And then to the boundary side, we have a fade, and then we have the F who's in the flat, and he should be matched by the wheel. And then you can teach your rover in cover 9, if 3 doesn't go vertical, what do you want him to do? Do you want him to take away the middle space of the field? Do you want him to work to the weak side? Those are all things, coaching adjustments that you can do. The last pattern match example I have here, I added a post wheel dig. So the post wheel should be pretty simple. We should be able to match that. The corner's got to match the wheel route down the field. The free safety's got to match the post route. Now we're going to work on a high-low here. So you got to dig and you got to shallow to the weak side. Now on the boundary side, we're in man, but we don't chase man to the zone side. So the corner's taught, if you get a shallow route by L, you're going to go zone off your quarter. So you'll see a shallow route by L here. He's going to zone off his quarter, which is going to allow him to pick up the wheel out of the backfield. Now the will linebacker, who's got man-to-man on F, when he gets a low call or an in call by the corner, he knows now the corner is free. I don't have to chase the F. And as the L goes across the formation, the will linebacker will make a low call, so the Mike will be able to pick him up. So there's your high-low, and there's your match. So now the will linebacker, because he got an in call, he knew he doesn't have to cover the back out on the wheel. Then as the receiver goes below him, he makes a low call. And in his mind, a low call means he needs to turn and look for first crosser, which was that dig coming across. And so the Mike linebacker was able to match that guy coming across, and he's able to match number 3, and we should still have help from the strong safety on the field side flat area. So that's how we would match a post wheel dig or a shallow wheel. We don't see wheels a whole lot, but in 7-on-7 you see them a lot. You kind of have to start from the standpoint of how do we cover 5 vertical routes, how do we cover 4 vertical routes, and then how do we cover wheel routes. And you seem to kind of back into teaching all of that. And so that's the progression we go to. Now, some of the final thoughts here before we get to some of the film is basing it, actually let's do the film first, and then I'll finish with the final thoughts. So, okay, we're going to look at some of these principles of using cover 9, cover 7, cover 6 on game film. So we're going to start looking at, this is eventually I believe we get into a cover 9 here look. Now, the important part here is we're facing a team that does a lot of different shifts and motions. And so that's the whole idea behind what we do, recognizing surfaces and your guys not getting flustered on what they're seeing. So this one actually starts out as a nub. There's a nub set here, just the 2 receivers. Now they motion over, and so it ends up being, if I pause it here, it ends up being for us a tray set. So remember, here's our rover having to make his adjustment calls. We got a tray set with the back off set. Now, one of the things that happened with that is our kids are also coached to understand that if this guy is in motion, then somebody's ineligible, which means that guy is ineligible. So in this case here, they run a vertical route, and you can see because number 3 was ineligible, which was the tight end, then our rover was able to adjust. Even if he had a cover 9 call, number 3 didn't go vertical, number 3 was a ineligible guy. Either reason is good enough for him to now work. He can now work to the weak side. So I'll show you another look at this. Here's a little bit tighter look. Again, so our rover right here is making the calls. He makes a check. He makes another check. His eyes are right here. We got no vertical route. He turns his eyes and breaks on the ball, and we get an interception. And all of the motion pre-snap did not affect him because it's all about his surface area. And here's one last look at it. You can see it from the quarterback standpoint. There's the rover. You see him making the check. You see the will making the check. To them, this is just a tray set. And if we're in cover 9 here, and we are because you see his eyes right here are on this number 3. But when number 3 does not go vertical, watch his eyes change. And so his eyes now look to help out to the one receiver side, and he's able to break on the ball and make a good play here for us. All right, so here's another 3-by-1 set. Again, this is a cover 9 call for us. And so we're going to have the backside. Remember, on a cover 9, backside is man-to-man. Now, you're going to see him bail out. We give the corner, that's our best corner. We give the corner the ability to play different man-to-man techniques. It's not always just press man. I mentioned earlier that we do a press to bail technique also. So he ends up being a press to bail here, but he is on his own. He is on his own on this backside. All right, it's a rollout, but he stays over top of the guy, and he's in a good position here to make the interception. You can look at, there's our rover right there, and he's in a cover 9, so he's getting a key there. So he's just he is picking up trash coming back on the backside there. All right, here's another 3-by-1. Again, based on game plan, we could go cover 6 or we can go cover 9 here. And we're giving it away a little bit more than what I like here. Do you see the rover kind of cheating over? Now they do have this extra back here, but so we're in clearly a cover 9. And here's that wheel route, that curl wheel route, right? This week we ended up matching that wheel route with the strong safety because number three goes vertical. So we just matched it, and it allowed our corner to be aggressive and drive on that curl throw there. So, from week to week, depending on what you're defending, if they never throw the wheel and they only throw the curl, we try to we can make those adjustments, and he does a good job on that. All right, here's another 3-by-1. I'll finish a couple more 3-by-1, but this is a cover 6 look. We're running at least a cloud on one side, and then we're more like a cover 7, I should say. Cover 7 with a cloud. We're getting a special here, man-to-man, and then comboing off of these two guys. But then on the backside, he is making a cloud call here, which why that's beneficial here is they're going to try to run off the corner and then leak the back out. But with the cloud call, the corner will be able to come off and pick him up. So there goes the back, but now you see the corner. They didn't expect him to stay there. They thought they would run him off, and then they would be able to throw it. The back was one-on-one with the bandit, our outside linebacker, and that's certainly a mismatch for us, having the running back try to be covered by a bandit. But again, this kind of goes back to our principles here of not giving the offense a clean look. So again, independent of what's happening on the field side here, it's all independent. Over here, the rover is communicating with him what we're going to play over here. And he makes a cloud call. So the corner now can be aggressive and jump anything that comes underneath him here. So as he backpedals and they throw it up, he's in great position there. And that's how mixing up your coverages, giving them the same pre-snap looks can benefit you in baiting them into a big throw. All right, so here's another 3-by-1. I'm going to look more about this ends up being a sack, but look a little bit more about our configuration here. The only part I want to mention is it starts out in an empty. And so our guys are playing these 3 receivers and these 2 receivers. And then once they shift back to us, it's just another trace set. And so, again, we can run cover 6, we can run cover 9. We could be in a blitz situation here. There's a lot of different things we could be in. And in this case, we're in a cover 9. And we're able to cover them and have a big sack here. You see what the quarterback sees. This is a sprint out look by the quarterback, coverage sack, if you will. He's not able to get turned around and make the throw. All right, here's another one. This is our first doubles look. So we got a 2-by-2 look here. Now, it's somewhat in the middle of the field, let's say left middle. So we made a read call over here, a strong call over here. And so we're working that. You see the Will linebackers bumped out a little bit there. Really good job of taking away the quick throw there by our strong safety. As you can see, he's one of these. He was really good at doing this back pedal technique. So remember, he's lining up outside of number 2. So he was able to use his back pedal technique, and then they were able to read sprint out here. And so they were able to get wide and take that away and allow us the pursuit to get there and make a big play and make a big sack. You get a look at what the quarterback sees as he rolls out here. You can see there's just really nothing on that front side. So he has to go backside. And we have good contain there. All right, so here's a look at a run. So it's a double set for us, but they're pretty tight, so we don't get a huge bump out of the Will linebacker here. But the Will linebacker is able to flow very fast. Remember, they like to run into the boundary, and he's able to slide through there and make that play. And our linebackers can be really aggressive because they're not worried about cutbacks. And he actually comes through the open B gap. But into the boundary, you can do that because of the angle. You can cheat and go through that B gap. To the field's a little different. But again, when we're forcing teams to run into the boundary, I mentioned that before, and so the angles are just a little bit different. It can be a lot tougher on them. All right, here's another one. This one's a run to the field. So this is a run to the field out of a pro look. So out of a pro look. So you're going to see a wide, strong safety with his back to number 1. I think you see that here. Here he is. All right. And so they're going to run some kind of lead out here to the field, and we're able to stretch it out and go fit for just a couple yard gain there. Okay, final thoughts on how we do our nickel defense. Number 1, we love basing in the nickel. We have proven the drawback of basing in the nickel has been stopping the run. I think we've been very successful stop and run, but it's just not about being in a nickel. It's about getting secondary support. Using the advantages of surfaces or formation configurations and being able to know when you got to get an extra fit out of the secondary is important. And then finally, you have to teach tackling such a fundamental thing, but there's a lot of different ways to teach tackling. We teach it from a standpoint of an effective tackle for us is when you hit the guy and he gets no more yards. So if you're going to tackle from the secondary, you have to be able to tackle and not get two more yards after the tackle. And you're using smaller guys. So even though that wasn't a big component of what my talk was today, I can tell you that's probably one of the things that it's a little thing to talk about, but it's a big thing in practice as far as being aggressive on tackling. So I appreciate your time. I hope you got something out of it. I do have one more episode 3. I'm going to talk about our main sub package. In the nickel defense, we have to have a sub package for teams that are base 3 back, and that's our goal line short yardage stuff. So I'll be talking about that in my next episode. Thank you.